it is 5:30. We'll get things kicked off. Of course, we can bring everybody up to speed as they come in. We'll call it order. We are missing a secretary. Do we have anybody that would like to fill in to take minutes? Lovely nominations or volunteers for that.
Could I speak to that?
Yes, please.
I spoke with the mayor several times. I have strongly urged him to consider assigning a staff person to sit with the commission and actually be responsible for taking the minutes instead of putting that on a member of the commission. He's agreed that he's going to see if he can figure out a way to do that. I also offered, and I will offer to anybody that volunteers tonight, to edit the minutes if you will send them to me before I forget what happened. But I'm not going to put words in anybody's mouth. I'm just going to make sure that the intent of the discussion is clear in the minutes, because the minutes are important. So, yeah, if somebody wants to do it temporarily, let's just say that maybe we can figure a way to make this more convenient for commission members in the future.
Sure. I appreciate you, Rob. Any volunteers to take a couple notes and turn in the minutes for the next meeting? Okay. So we will do a roll call, and I'll kind of lead that off here. We do have a member off and a new member on. So we'll start with Mr. Clark Baker. Here. All right, Mr. Michael Bryant. Here. Mr. Joey Markowski. Here. Myself, of course, Kyle McMullen. Here. And our newest member, Ms. Megan Ramsey. Thank you for joining us. We are technically still outlanded, but he did send in his official resignation. And now Megan will be taking, I guess, technically Matt's spot, correct? Okay, correct. Well, we do have a quorum. Now, as far as the agenda, we got 6 and 7 from what you guys were sent prior, and then it's a review of Harrison Heights final plat and review of Harrison Heights site plans. We will add those in at point 6 and 7. We have a quorum. The minutes were just sent out at 5 o'clock via email to all of us. I believe they were to all of us. Let me check. Yes, it looks like you should have an email from Landon in there with the minutes attached from our July meeting. So on that piece, I will look for approval of said minutes. Okay, got a motion by Joey, second by Clark. All in favor? Aye. All right. Get that out the door. Okay, again, it's added to the agenda, the review of Harrison Heights final plat. I know that the team, Mr. Bruno, there he is, perfect time, he's waiting. I know his team has been working with Chad and Rob extensively over the past about a month and a half here to get something to us. So I do believe they have something to present today. Am I correct? Is that right? Okay.
We've received. I was reviewing with the help of staff the application, and I was working with. I do a checklist, and I recommended that this was going to be a minor plat, 1-lot subdivision. That's what I had recommended early on, and they decided that that's what they probably should do. I received a copy of it. I had extensive comments on the thing, and we got a copy this morning, and I've got a few more comments. And I think the engineer for the record is here to maybe give you an overview of that. So I would suggest that, and then when you're done, I'll give you my recommendations.
Right, fantastic. Is there anything to review or see, Rob, or?
I don't have a copy. Do you have a copy of it?
I've got the plans. I didn't bring the plat. I was hoping maybe Chad would have the plat.
I've got a very small, maybe hard to read, but will give some sort of idea on where we're at.
You just pass that around. Okay. The plat, in my opinion, is acceptable if a couple of exceptions and contingencies can be met. And I will just read those off for the record. One is that this was submitted by a local surveyor, and it's got an aerial photograph in there that makes it difficult to even see what a lot of the lot dimensions are. And so I'm recommending that the aerial be taken off. I mean, it's got a location thing on it, that's useful, but I would recommend taking that off. It does not show existing property lines that are going to constitute the subdivision, which is in effect taking two separate parcels and making them into a one-lot subdivision, because and it needs to show what the existing lot line is, just that, so that it sees what properties are being amalgamated in effect into a single lot. The only thing I wasn't sure of, but I don't think it's an issue at this time, was whether there were going to be any easements, and you may be able to speak to that. And it's missing a bill of assurance, and that needs to be taken care of before it's finally approved. I'll go through the checklist here. There's really not much missing, except that I'm not sure about. Do you have an accurate description of the location of the monuments? Is that on the plat?
I think you got it in there as far as like there's a fire water hydrant, there's a valve for that and so forth.
But for
those are shown.
But for the corners?
Yeah.
Okay.
My apologies, can I get your name, please?
Jim Whitson, W-H-I-T-S-O-N.
Thank you.
And I would suggest that, just as a note of caution, that I would recommend that on a separate vote, you waive the requirement for direct access to a public street, because this is a landlocked property, and the commission has the authority to waive the requirements. It's in the interest of good management. It has access, the access easement is verified, it's legal, it's okay, and under the circumstances, just waive the requirement for immediate access of the property to a public street. And I would take a separate vote on that, just to clarify that that condition doesn't apply in this particular instance.
How is that not important?
It has access.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it has.
It's a landlocked property. It does not have access.
It has access.
The code says it has to have access to a city street or a publicly approved private street. It does not have those things. The commission has not addressed the known traffic issue, and approving that access to not be on a city street would do nothing but exacerbate the traffic.
Approval of the plat has nothing to do with the
The
traffic
approval
issue.
of, the final approval of the plat would be permission to proceed.
No. Permission to, yeah, technically it would.
Okay, so it can be a preliminary plat, fine.
No.
That doesn't have anything about the plan on it
Preliminary
whatsoever.
plat's not required in this case.
Okay, then don't turn in one, but that has nothing, as far as what is planned, and no access is provided, the issues haven't been resolved.
I would simply disagree that access is provided. It's not parcel itself to the street, it's to an easement to the street, and that's sufficient in my mind, in my opinion.
I think the judge would disagree.
I don't think they would.
I think they would.
I mean, I think if you have a legal easement.
My opinion is that this commission's not doing its due diligence according to the law and the zoning.
We're doing the due diligence by going through the steps and knowing this person has access. We can't say that the access may or may not be reversed,
He
but
just
they have,
asked you to.
but they have access.
He
They
just
have
asked you to
access.
remove a requirement of the code.
But it's a property that, again, there's no access other than the access that it currently has.
Which is the reason the code is there. That is the sole purpose of that code, is so that a property like this is not approved.
So as a committee, we can't provide solutions to properties that would improve the area. Despite this property having access, given legal access to a state highway, where there's no other way to get access to and from to that property. I mean, that's our job is to.
Again, the purpose of the code is to ensure that all properties adjoin city property.
And I'm telling you, according to the code, the commission has the authority to waive that.
They do have the authority to waive that. I am saying it's a bad idea.
Fair enough.
The commission should not do that.
And, one other thing,
no plat should be approved without a complete
scale
plan,
on the thing
providing
should be
for
1 to
access to
50.
public utilities, transportation.
I forwarded all the comments to Keaton, he's gonna revise all those, so he's working on that. He just couldn't get this tonight, but he is gonna revise those, including the scale and the picture.
So you saw my comments.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, those are the conditions I would recommend, and I would recommend approval, subject to those conditions, and that it not be signed until staff has reviewed the submission, and the conditions being met. The conditions that take the aerial photography out, that you annotate the existing property lines, because it doesn't show the boundaries. It also should make sure that it lists I think it's got in there the title and page of the existing properties, so that it's crystal clear what's being incorporated into the single lot. Just like to confirm that, and that the bill of assurance be reviewed by staff for consistency. It is not approved, it's simply reviewed to make sure that it doesn't violate any city requirement. And that the scale be dropped down from 1 to 100 to 1 to 50, which is a requirement.
So those items there those would be the conditions in which we need to clean up that plat.
Yeah, and again, I'm recommending a waiver. I would take that as a separate vote.
Okay, of the access?
Yes.
Okay. So the conditional pieces are the ones you just mentioned?
And that would be to approve the plat conditional.
Okay. And the waiver would be just the access? And just to expand upon that conversation, Rob, where do you think, there's not a one-size-fits-all for these laws, and that's why we have this commission and the whole nine yards. So in what scenario do you think that would apply to where that we need to have access to a street? Obviously, this is a unique situation. This is our only access.
As a general rule, when you're looking at a new subdivision, one that has just never had this single piece of property, 10 acres or so, and you're gonna subdivide it into multiple lots, all of those lots have to have access to a public street. And you cannot landlock a piece of property when you're subdividing or developing. This is a landlocked piece of property, and it's not a violation of the zoning code. That the planning commission can waive any requirement of subdivision regulations when it's in their interest to do so. In my opinion, it's an interest to do so because its property is landlocked and otherwise not available, and they do have a reasonable remedy that's legal access to the street.
So, I mean, Mike, what is in your mind, your solution to a property like that?
Like, it's not for me to say what the solution is, right? That's your point. It's not for me to say what the solution is. It's for me to say that he did not meet the code, and he did not meet the code, he's not even close.
What do you mean not even
So if you approve his plat and or his building permit, which are supposed to be approved conjoined, if you approve this and allow him to go on, how are you guaranteeing the public that he's gonna provide reasonable access for police, fire, and medical services?
That would be
That would be in the site plan.
the site plan, but that would also be prior.
Again,
That's next item.
all of this should be combined.
No.
Yes, it should. This should be a planned development. The use map should show that property as commercial. The city should take this on as a planned development. The residential zoning should be conditional upon his comprehensive plan that's approved by the city that provides for transportation, utilities.
Until he has a legal plot that can be approved. He has to have the plat in order to do the site plan, and that's why we're taking him in that order. The site plan, that's a different issue.
So is the site plan, how is the site plan required? What part of the code requires the site plan?
It's in the design section of the subdivision regulations.
Okay, and so was it?
And that's next.
Should be with the plat, I mean, so you're gonna give conditional approval on the plat?
This
And
plat
come back for final
is not a
approval?
design issue.
Well, one, it
Minor
is, it's a zoning
subdivision,
issue.
It's not a design issue, it does not require a preliminary plat or a site plan. because you are consolidating two lots into a single lot. It does not require a plan like preliminary plat, it just simply doesn't require it. The site plan is only required because it's considered a large-scale development, because it's got more than one structure on the lot. That's why it's coming in as a site plan, because that does have to be reviewed and approved by the commission. The plat is simply for the purposes of recording the property, and it sets up the design standards for a single lot. That's all it does.
Is the city accepting it as acceptable, as an acceptable piece of property? That plat doesn't show the information required.
Doesn't show the details because that's not required for recording.
It is if this commission says it is. If we require additional information, then he has to provide it before he can. And again, I back up to the fact that it shouldn't have been rezoned to begin with, but we're under obligation to remedy zoning issues according to the code. When we find a piece of landlocked property or one that had something subdivided illegally, we're supposed to remedy it, not perpetuate the problem, okay? And in my opinion, we acted out of line by doing that, because...
Let me put it in other terms. If you fail to approve this, you will be in court because you've denied this person the right to develop his property.
Oh, nobody's denying him the right to develop his property.
I would argue that though, Mike, I think that's exactly what.
You're waiving code so that he can continue. You're not asking him to meet the code, you're waiving it.
It's in the code that it can be waived, though.
For good reason, again, that's...
But what more good reason is this property, you have a commercial property that is landlocked. There's nothing that can be, you can't create a road.
That's your opinion. Yes, you can create a road. I'm a transportation engineer and I've done it my whole life. I've built highways for the last 21 years.
I understand that, but reasonably, what are we doing at this? This is, I think, for everybody.
You're upholding your duty to the public to make sure that his development...
Where's his reasonable access, Michael? Where's his reasonable access?
Where are we gonna build the road?
That's their problem.
No, it's not.
Yes,
he has access to his property, legal access, he wants to
develop
it.
You worry about lawsuits, but then you put you zoned a residential area in the middle of a commercial property. What was your official reason that you submitted to the city council?
I think amongst our group, if you're asking me.
No, what was your official written reason, recommendation to the city council? That you copied to him?
That it met all
So
the...
you didn't follow the code then? The planning commission has to make an official determination, submit a request, an official request to the city council. I haven't seen one. I haven't been given any information on this committee. I haven't seen his submittal, his application, seen nothing but what's at these meetings.
And that's typically where we rely on staff. You're not the code enforcement officer.
But you're asking me to vote on it without information that I knew.
And the information is being provided by staff. That's what I don't...
Okay, so how is the traffic issue going to be resolved? Because...
And tell me how that has any business on Harrison Street's responsibility to solve traffic.
It's on the developer.
There's no...
Have we acknowledged that this development would create a traffic issue?
Anything along that corridor would create a traffic.
So we acknowledge that?
There's no proof of that.
Right, so it's the duty of the commission to avoid those situations, to avoid congestion in the streets, to consider the impact that the development will have on transportation. Have you done that? Have you commissioned a study? Have you given an official reason? Because when you go ahead and let him do this, and he starts using this legal easement across somebody else's property, then you will be in court for sure because they're gonna sue.
After they've given the access.
They don't have, the easement is there, like y'all have clearly pointed out, there was a personal easement given for one person to go to their residence. That's the reason the judge gave the easement.
Successor there's a sign.
Yeah, depending on how it was written.
However many times that property were to be subdivided.
Right, and so now we're back to the fact that it goes against the code that says that anything developed has to be on a city street, and I do not think that should be waived.
So do we...
Because essentially letting him use that easement is not giving the public consideration.
Call the question. That means take vote.
let's take a vote to see if.
I make a motion that it's denied.
All in favor?
No, gotta be a second.
No?
Yeah. No second. Just wanna check real quick, too, Rob, with, as far as quorum. So, we're missing one. Now, I think we're gonna
It's
exclude
requires a
Megan.
majority of votes present.
Okay, I think we're gonna exclude Megan from the vote. Is that right, Megan? Maybe a conflict of interest. Okay.
Apparently.
So there is maybe a business relationship there, so we just keep that. So if we exclude Megan, do we have quorum at that point?
We're gonna have one that's existing, that was before.
Okay.
We won't have anything in addition.
If four.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I speak?
Please.
So, I believe five would be a quorum, but I do believe the rules require a majority of the commissioners, so I think four is required for a motion to carry.
Okay.
And it may be relevant, though the chair sometimes doesn't vote, you may have to vote. if
Sure.
you're for it.
Okay.
You have a quorum.
Okay.
To vote.
One check. So let's at least kind of get this piece here. So review the Harrison Street final plat. Again, I would open up to a motion for approval based on.
No, your motion to grant the waiver.
Grant the waiver. We want to start with there?
That's what I.
Okay, we'll start with a waiver of access, requirement there, but I would look for a motion for that piece. We have a motion to waive the access requirement.
Make a motion to waive the access requirement.
Second.
A motion by Joey, second by Kyle to waive the access requirement per code of subdivision regulation for said property. All in favor? Aye. And aye as well, so motion carried.
Is there a nay?
Any nays?
Aye.
So that's four, one against, one abstain.
Got it. Motion carried on that piece, so waiver of access on that.
Now, take a motion on approving the plat with the contingencies.
There we go.
Conditions.
There you go. Now we would look for the motion for approval of the plat, based on contingencies. I can tell you that Rob has, was an engineer, and for everybody here, this plat has probably went through more filters and, eyes on it than it has, than many plats that have come prior to this, so, I do certainly know that, but, we'd look for that motion, guys, on those. Four contingencies?
I show surveyor doing the aerial photo, and it said existing property line, and the bill assurance to be reviewed by staff for consistency and scale drop from 1 to 100 to 1 to 60. 4.
Look for a motion there, guys.
Make a motion to do what you just said.
I have a motion for, conditional, it would be conditional approval, make sure you're going in right. Conditional approval of the final plat based on the four contingencies there listed by, Mr. McMullen. All in favor?
Second.
Second?
I'll second.
Second by Kyle. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well. Any opposed? Aye. So again, 4 to 1.
One abstention.
With one thing, that will carry. Okay, so we move on to the site plan, correct? All right, let's talk site plan, guys.
You have a copy.
I do have that. Where you at with that, kind of from here? or-
Here's a couple of them. Yeah, guys, if we wanna come up to him and look at it.
We're proposing this in 2 phases. This is phase 1. This is north, so you're coming out off of Harrison Street back here through the parking lot. This is the access that we've been talking about. Current house is right here. Oh, we're gonna have, who are we gonna have? This.
There's not actually a house there, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still a home, still a home.
On Road, she used to do a lot of that.
Who is it?
On the roof.
On the roof, yes.
Yeah, she used to do a lot.
So it's a mix of, studio units, two-bedroom townhouses that are two-level, stairs inside of them, and then some family units that are three-bedroom, so we've got a mix of those. We've reviewed this with the, fire chief, and we've had some, at least 1 or 2 meetings with the department heads to kind of talk through the project, and, you know, we figured out that we've got it from a fire code standpoint. Anything that's got, people on the second level, so like the studios, you've got people, residents upstairs and downstairs. And with the 3-bedroom units, you've got, 3-bedroom units upstairs and downstairs. So by code, we have to have, fire protection installed in those units. So this will have sprinkler systems just in the studios and in the 3-bedroom units. That's the ones in red and the ones in green. So you've got to have a fire hydrant within 100 feet of the FDC for those units, which was shown there. There's an existing fire hydrant here, we're adding one here that was installed for the project. The townhouses do not require, fire protection. And so, the flow here, basically, we come in, we've got, trash, community trash unit here, community mail boxes at this point. And then we've got parking on both sides. Pretty much taking all this property, the 25-foot off the back setback as required. 7-foot setback required on the sides, which we meet on this side, 7 feet. And there's no issue on the frontage setback. Any questions?
Fire truck get that there. And the fire truck turn around without backing.
Jimmy, I have a thought for the second page. You have one that shows the second page?
The second phase of the house goes, we complete, some additional, townhouses, additional parking. We've got basically a loop at that point. We're adding a detention basin for, rain runoff, calculating the needs for those requirements from Dana to, detention basin. And so that's being added as part of phase 2.
And that's why the curb was coming into play, correct?
But it's the funny space because of the property lines and all that, so that the active there.
And those are 30-foot width roads.
If it's anything, we can cut that one.
You're thinking that's too tight for?
No, I'm just asking if,
Okay,
you know,
if
if it's
it's
designed
looked at.
that, well, it's just part of the code for fire trucks to.
Absolutely.
And be able to turn around like a dead end street, but that's correct.
Just already thought about that, you know, I was concerned about trash trucks, the same question, you know, as far as being able to get in and out, so we kind of shown that. I did not show fire truck access. I think there is probably adequate, ability to turn, or back up and turn and come back out. In phase
Make
1,
a loop.
or phase 1, excuse me.
They can make a loop.
Loop on, in phase 2, they can make a loop. Phase 1,
We've had to require like a temporary road.
And we can probably build something like this. We probably can build an emergency exit lane here, just fire trucks. Or
Just
like-
keep it gravel
Yes,
initially,
yes,
perhaps.
keep it gravel there for now. The thing is we have so many things in the second phase, that financially will be a huge impact. So if you include some of this on the phase 1, financially it will make any sense, because we just have to have rentals on the first phase. So that helps, so we can come back and add all that to there with another, because none of this is, none of that is
Basically, we're adding a clubhouse that would be for the community, and some, we've got a vision maybe of a park with pavilions, so basically making some area for family use, in that zone. Has that been discussed? Ready to share in phase 1 report?
I think this is what we'll can run with the Amazon.
I think the agreement was good in phase 2. Lawsuit from JDQ.
From the JDQ, you take the property line. You go from grass area to impervious. Whole purpose of this is make, put it back to pre-site conditions.
So the lawsuit from the falls on that? Who's
No, like wherever the water leaves your property now, if you build it and you don't handle it, you're putting more water on your neighbor, and they would have the right to forgive.
Yeah, so right now all this water that gets collected is that little, collection that's between the Home Depot and the plaza, is that little ditch that goes all the way there and connects to the pond in front of the Home Depot. That's what the whole thing is right now. Yeah, we can hear, we can do this again. So we went quite a bit back and forth with them until we got that approved.
Is this curved?
The sidewalks, would have, no curbs on the road, no. Excuse me?
We're gonna do all the parking lot and everything.
On phase two,
Well, it's all of it, how you gonna get it to this point?
I've got, I didn't bring the drainage, I'm sorry. I've got the brought utility drawings, but we've got a, HDPE drainage. We've got, catch basins in the streets on both sides with the HDPE line that comes over and goes into the catch basin. So all the water goes into that and into the catch basin, into the retention basin. Exactly.
Has the city engineer approved the drainage plan?
They reviewed my calculations on the size of the retention basin and the calculations for the pipe. So that portion they looked at, approved them, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that. I guess he looked at it.
That's a big thing on Damon, as far as, that's one of the main healthy issues.
Right.
Water runoff, children, and stuff. So as long as Damon signs off on it, that's all we got.
Catch basin, that's your question.
Are you gonna go for my capital?
Yeah, I mean, like,
So I got everybody on the same page.
Other questions? Utility wise, we've got, sewer water, which, the department has looked at this once. I guess we'll have to back off unless we get further on the project, but, we're picking up existing sewer, there's manholes in this area, all the old collections fall pretty good. We'll be adding some manholes as part of the project, and running that north with 8-inch line, getting existing manhole. Water line is a 16-inch ductile line that runs along the west property between this property and Home Depot. We're coming off of that 16-inch line, putting in the fire hydrant, and then feeding the fire protection units as well as the houses. This is all electric, so we're coming off the introduced power or all power, no gas. So our fire protection requirements, in each unit that require fire protection. Phase two is just adding additional units, taking sewer into those manholes that we'll install on the first part phase of the project and adding the courthouse. We've got street lights that are, one of those phases in order to provide adequate lighting for, when this is before the project period.
Any comments, Ron, Chad?
I will say, first staff, we met with Engineer Bruno. If this is approved, the way the process will work is before any actual building permits are issued, we all get back together again for like basically a pre-construction, going over the construction details and especially with the phase one, phase two, we want to make sure everything's clear on
Who's the commercial contractor?
Parker.
Project?
Yeah. So it's gonna be handled right. And when I get to these things, when I get to do something that's not required, I'm not gonna build a $10 million project and speed it and some stuff, because it's gonna be right, drainage or road or whatever it is. It's gonna be done the right way. with not a lot of guys are showing up at the door and trying to get things done around here. But from our side, we're gonna do our best for also to handle the work.
Kind of you with exactly the drainage aspect of it.
Yeah.
I know he looked at it.
Yeah.
So I
Came over today, so my understanding is looking at it, see what.
Yeah, we had like 3 meetings with the whole staff over there. Before we showed up here.
So Rob, what are we looking for in the first term of that?
I'd say if you have a site plan that has been looked at staff, I can't speak to the issues about whether the fire marshal has approved it, whether the city engineers approved it, but I am assuming he has, I am told they have. And the only question I had at all was that it needed to show the front yard setback. That was the only thing that I could really comment on.
Now,
And
phase two setback, is that like a setback from the property?
Was the front yard. The front yard in this case is abutting another property, but it has to have a front yard.
Okay.
And that's on the north side.
What were the side setbacks? What,
7 feet.
on the units without fire protection?
All
On the quads that you got, do you have 10 or 7?
What's that, Steve?
Do you have 10 feet or 7 feet in between the quads?
10 feet between the buildings. Yes. And that's been discussed with the fire chief.
Yeah. That's good.
The only condition that I would recommend is that no permit be issued until the final plat has been approved and recorded.
Any more comments on that, guys? Questions for team here?
The only thing I saw was that the front yard setback needed to be shown.
To answer a question to you earlier, that said about the lawsuit with Home Depot. I own the lot on the Nathan Ave on the other side on Dogwood, the back Home Depot's property. All the parking lot of Home Depot drainage is in that property. And I've tried to contact them, they won't take no responsibility for it. I'm having to raise the property for 6 feet to get it off the drain because of the parking lot. And there's no pond there, there's nothing, and they don't even care for that.
That's the same situation you're putting the public in right here.
I'm not, because we're gonna.
You don't think somebody else is gonna could take issue with your development?
We're gonna take a pond, we're gonna put a pond there. They don't have.
I'm not talking about necessarily drainage, just access, drainage, noise, all of it.
I mean, I'm doing a big project right now with 150 doors in Batesville. And city has to have impact fees. If I'm coming and making the trouble in traffic and has to be put a stoplight there, we all do a study traffic and all of us around. And then based on my percentage, I'll put the money up front and you can charge me impact fees. But you cannot ask me to take responsibility for putting a stoplight on the highway road. That just doesn't, that's not my job.
Nobody's asking you to do that.
Like the first meeting, that's what it is. So I just thought maybe.
That's what you proposed in the first meeting. I said was a bad idea.
So guys, on the actual review of the site plan, so we've got, Rob has mentioned if you're looking maybe at conditional approval of the final plat being approved and signed, and recorded, I should say. So at least on that front, any other questions on site plan or anything else like that, guys?
Rob, when you said final plat being approved, you mean by staff?
Recorded. Then we know we've got, that's what takes care of it. And the staff have to agree for the chairman to sign it. That means everything.
If the conditions that are imposed have been met, and then it's approved.
Okay, well, I will look for some sort of action there. Do we have a motion to put that into place, or you guys?
Motion to approve it.
Conditional to final plat being recorded.
Final plat being recorded.
Okay, do you have a motion, I'll look for a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
4-1, that will approve or will carry.
One abstention.
One abstention, sorry. Sorry, me. Okay.
Is there anything else on this particular thing? It's on our docket?
I don't think so.
Rob, is it out of line for us as a commission to send something to the city council with a recommendation to look at traffic situations?
No, that's your duty.
It's not required. That's one of the things the commission would look at, especially on a rezone, as to whether the use would create a traffic issue. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, 9 times out of 10, all the neighbors' objections to how much traffic's gonna be created is not terribly factual. If there are studies that, and facts show that there's going to be a traffic issue, then of course that needs to be taken into account as to whether the proposed use and the rezone would be justified at that point. But in terms of the site plan, you have to take care of the safety of whoever is entering and exiting that development. And there's multiple ways to solve that problem. Most of the time, it's with the property itself having direct access and not being landlocked. And when you can do that, ordinarily you would create a public street, but you can't do it on a landlocked piece of property. So that's a site plan, and it's a preliminary plat sort of issue when a preliminary plat is justified or required.
Again, we started this wrong to begin with, 6 years ago when it was rezoned, that first property was rezoned. We continued it, everyone on this commission, everyone in the public acknowledges the traffic issue and no one's done anything about it. You didn't make an official recommendation to the city council, given a reason that the zoning.
It's never been brought up to any.
I can speak to that. The city council has the authority, they can ask questions and they can request the chairman or the staff or anybody else to be present to explain why the commission did something. And the minutes should clearly reflect, and in fact, the minutes are supposed to be done far enough advance of the next city council meeting that the council knows what the commission voted on and why they voted on it.
Again, my issue with this whole thing all along, I don't have a problem with your development. But we started off on the wrong foot, we've gone back completely wrong, and we have neglected the public in this process. We have neglected them, and now we're waiving code.
I appreciate the opinion on that. So we will move on. So does that conclude the Harrison Heights review? Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate the work, working with the staff, everything.
I'd like to make a motion that a traffic study be undertaken to determine how this development will impact the public.
Would the city pay for that? I don't think that's our, do we have an authority to send that to the city council?
Kyle, have you read the code, word for word, cover to cover?
No, I have not.
You need to.
No, I have not, Rob.
You need to, brother, because you're putting yourself in
I understand,
liability.
Mike, but you're almost crossing lines there, getting silly at this point.
How am I
And everybody sees it, so.
I'm sorry, how am I crossing?
It's overkill. We have staff for a reason, we have professionals to do this. So, again, it's.
Okay, so then why are we going against?
You're undermining everybody's
Everybody's
position.
fire department.
Literally, we're supposed to help people, and there's code in place so we can try to get a solution, a positive solution for the public. We're not trying to police every person that comes in here. We're not trying to skin them, dude. We're trying to find a solution.
Nobody's trying to do that.
This property in question would have never been developed and will never be developed under your.
That's your opinion. It's being developed right now.
Because of what we are allowing and granting, period.
Exactly.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
A second for a traffic study related to this property?
Now,
traffic study on Brown's
I
property?
know nothing about a traffic study.
Do you think it's a good idea, yes or no? You wanna undertake one, yes or no?
I don't wanna pay for one personally.
I don't either.
I don't know who, would be responsible for that.
We'll work that out after we get it covered.
Is that, my understanding is that is the highway department's,
Can we look at the code, Mr. Ross, can we break the code out and read it so that we can all abide by it?
I'll tell you what, let's go, I'll make a motion to move on to the next bullet point. I gotta get home to my family. I don't have all night to be here.
And can I read code?
We've already passed
Word.
Harrison Heights, it's gone through. Let's go to the next bullet point.
So motion on the floor, no second, we'll carry on from that.
Motion dies.
Right. So we're looking at the review of draft revisions of the residential zoning provisions. I have a note in here though, Rob, about R2.
Yeah, it calls for a public hearing. If there's no public hearing, you can elect either to call a public hearing and hearing nobody, say you held it, or we can table it and postpone it till next month. But I wanted to bring up something as a result of all this conversation about this application. As a general rule, I don't try to improve the zoning or subdivision regulations. I assume they're working okay unless I hear there's squeaky wheels or something's not going right. I have never reviewed in total a multifamily development before now. And when I reviewed this one, I got real bad confused and saw two issues that I think need to be addressed in our discussion about revising the R2 zoning classification on multifamily. Right now, the city code, the zoning code says that multifamily is 3 units or more, which means a duplex is not multifamily. Now, in my universe, duplex is 2 families, and that's multi. So I think that's missing. And then in the subdivision regulations, now and in the lot thing, it says that the lot dictates what the density is going to be, which to me is the reverse of, you determine the size of the lot based on the number of units you want to build, which is just the opposite of the way I look at things. The lot tells me how many units I can put in, and it depends on what the density is based on the lot size, not the number of units I want and the lot I have to do it. So, and because the definition treats a duplex as, it ignores completely, and it says, and this is where it's confusing, and it confused me a lot, and we had a long discussion about it, that the minimum lot size for any multifamily, which is 3-family unit or more, is 11,500 square feet. And anything over a triplex, over 3, you have to also add 2,000 square feet per unit of any unit that's over 3. So I'm trying to calculate all of this as to how much property was necessary in order to do this. You had to go through all of those permutations to figure that out. Because I had 3 duplexes, which don't count as multifamily, and there's nothing in the code that says how much lot you need to have for a duplex. It just says the minimum, regardless, is 11,500. So I thought, wait a minute, this isn't making sense to me. We've had questions and issues about what density ought to be on a piece of property. And I thought, all of this, in my mind, you could go with a floor area ratio, you can go with dwelling unit per acre, and these are all mathematical calculations. And it occurred to me that it seems to me to determine the density, the way this was written almost suggests, well, maybe we don't have multi-story stuff, but we have multifamily. But it's confusing. And because the way it's written, it doesn't account for certain kinds of density requirements for triplexes or duplexes. Well, let's back up a second. Let's change the definition to a multifamily. And I wrote one down, if I can find it. I'm going to read what I think might work. This residential buildings on a single lot that contain multiple separate housing units for different households such as apartments, duplexes, and condominiums. These units could be side by side or stacked on top of each other, and they are designed to accommodate more than one family living independently in the same structure. I mean, that locks it in. It's anything over one. I went on to suggest that our code should explicitly say, and this is the zoning code, it should explicitly say that you can have more than one structure that's a multifamily on a given piece of property. And right now, the only place that even suggests that is in the subdivision regulations, what caused this review of the site plan in the first place, because that's considered large-scale development. But the subdivision regulations say that if you got more than one structure of multifamily, you have to have reviewed and approved by the planning commission. So I want to make it real clear that multifamily can be one unit or more. It can be multiple different kinds of units like this is doing, just to make it clear that these are permitted. And then I wanted to say that the determination of how many units you put on a piece of property is based on the size of the property. You count the footprint of the structures, however many there are, plus the required parking, plus the setbacks, and whatever's left is what you can develop. And you can go up to 3 stories. I also, just because I want you to think about it, is that one of the few complaints that I have seen over the years about multifamily units, especially 2, 3, 4 stories, is the neighbor who says, I don't want you to see me sunbathing. And so I'm thinking, okay, 5 feet side yard against the residential zone is not adequate. So I would say that on any multifamily development, that the setback goes 5 feet higher for each elevation over the second story. And so that you have a little bit more setback against the residential property. I'm not as worried about it on commercial or industrial, you could do that too, but I want a little bit more setback. You could also put some kind of a cap on the total amount of the property that could be covered by a cement building. But that could be kind of tricky too. Should it be 50%, 53%, 60%, 20%? I mean, I'd just soon leave that alone. The financial realities of the development and the physical location of the facility will probably dictate what is possible at that point. I kind of like to make things a little bit simpler and clearer to understand, so that's kind of the direction I'm heading in this. Right now, what you've got just doesn't make sense to me, and I think we ought to fix that before we proceed any further with making these changes to the residential sections of the code. I'd like feedback on that.
You're right. I don't like getting rid of the cheat code, as you told everybody, but you're right.
Well, and I think this unit or this particular development was really, I think it was a mix of a lot of different styles.
He's within the parameters.
Yeah, no, but I mean, this one really made your head kind of scratch.
We should simplify it. I would say the smallest lot that I can recall is probably 50 by 135. There might be something smaller, but I can't think of one. So that puts you at 6750, would be a minimum square footage in some R2 areas. So we've always gone under the assumption that if you have an R2 lot, you can put a duplex on. That you had to have 11,500 square feet to be able to go for a triplex or bigger. So I would
looking at that site plan, what's the square footage that's required for these 3 duplexes? Because it doesn't say. It does not say. It says what the square footage needs to be. 11,500.
I know it's 0.
So I thought, okay, the only way I can kind of make sense of this is to say the standard minimum lot size in R2 is 5,000 square feet. So that's what a duplex has to be on, at least 5,000 square feet. 11,500 for a duplex doesn't make any sense at all.
No.
That's crazy. So it gets a little more complicated than what I've been trying to do with these tables, but multifamily is more complicated, and large-scale development is more complicated.
Well, I mean, do we wanna come up with the map, or do we, I'm all about making it easier on Chad, as far as a straight calculation on square footage. I mean, if we do the floor plan of the house, and then do standard parking spaces, then.
What's the setbacks?
What's the setbacks, then, I mean, I'd be perfectly fine with it. Whatever makes it easier to calculate.
I mean, that's fair enough.
I will say the 2,000 square feet, that we've used does work to an extent. It works a lot better the bigger you go. On the development, there's a weird spot between 3 and 10 that you get kind of wonky on the parking spaces. But, listen, I'm wide open to whatever's easiest for him. It's all gonna wash out the same if we get properly, I think.
And if somebody wanted to develop multifamily like was done with Pruitt-Igoe in St. Louis, the old, well, the low-income housing sorts of things, high rises that provided no amenities whatsoever. If you did put some kind of a cap on the total amount of lot that could be developed or something like that, you could conceivably have most of it dashed. And it depends on how you all feel about whether that should be allowed.
It's gonna be hard to do that, because we do have a elevation cap on residential. So, it was 36 feet. Yeah. So that might get you a 4-story by the time you do your footers and so.
And just to make it more challenging and interesting, because you need something to sit here and do, is that the fire chief advises me that the maximum height that a truck can get to is 5 stories. Now, it's not inconceivable. We've had a discussion when we were doing the land use plan about the area south of Harrison, west of the Med Center, east of St. Louis Street, which might be appropriate for either mixed use or higher rise residential sorts of facilities. And so it's at least possible that you could go higher than the 3 stories that is a maximum for R2, but I wouldn't want to do it in R2 at all. So that would open the possibility that if you think some kind of mixed development and high rise or higher density might be appropriate in some area of town consistent with the land use plan, you could have an R3 zone. So that's not something that we need to do immediately, but if there's any sort of pressure to start seeing something.
Has anybody seen what Lance is wanting to do? I mean, the only place that I would see conceivably somebody wanting to do that commercial on the bottom story and then roll up, residential on top, which would definitely put you above the residential height, but I think it looked amazing, but I don't know where we put it here.
Again, you should be looking more at planned development and creating another zone.
You can do that now with planned development.
Okay.
I mean, you're talking anything of this size needs to be planned development. That's where we're at.
Well, I thought I'd throw that out there. That's no press to me. That would only be appropriate to consider at some point in the future if it looks like there is a demand for that because of the declining amount of space available inside the city limits to do higher densities. And I don't think they're there yet.
Any action that we need to take on those cleanup revisions for?
I'd say hold the public hearing next week, and I'll get you some actual language to look at.
Next meeting, public hearing next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, are we close to doing just a signing off on final version on it, you think?
Yeah, that's really the last thing as a result of this that I thought, well, we need to clean that up. Like I said, I don't clean up things if they don't need fixing, and this one needs fixing.
Yeah.
So I will update this and get that out to you so that we can, I didn't want to hold a public hearing at this time without that being on the table.
Okay. So we would we would table the scheduled item number 8 public hearing for next meeting, so we can get this in there with it too.
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, we'll roll on to number 9, draft revisions of zoning code for chapter 14:07, commercial zoning.
Basically, I did the same thing to commercial that I did for residential, where I put it in tables so it was easier to read, with one exception. There's a provision in the design standards of the subdivision regulations that says that if you are developing a commercial property next to a residential use or a residential zoning district, that you have to it requires increased setbacks on that adjacent property. And usually I see that in the zoning code, so I decided, let's add that if you have a piece of property that you want to zone, or if it is zoned, that you have to have a minimum setback of 25 feet on any side that borders a residential use or residential zoning district. And that's the only change that I've made to commercial requirements.
Right, that's already in the zoning code,
It's in the subdivision.
but it was in the zoning code, correct?
No. It wasn't. And the zoning code was 5 feet. And it wasn't.
You said 25 feet for anything abutting with the word commercial abutting residential.
Yes.
Or was it just in the conditional use permits before?
I don't think so.
It was in there before, if you had a commercial purpose next to a residential purpose, that you increase.
I'll look again, but I didn't see it or I wouldn't have come up with it.
Yeah, it was in there before.
I think it was in the subdivision code.
That's
And
probably
I
where,
think-
that's probably where I saw it was in the subdivision code. I didn't know it was in there to begin with.
Yeah, and,
Yeah, that's not a change.
It
You're
doesn't-
just putting it in the table.
yeah, putting it to the table, because that's when it becomes an issue when you're looking at a rezone. And if you weren't paying attention, something else that it's fair to let you know too, that I wanna emphasize that the subdivision regulations, if there's one thing that I need to do before I say goodbye Batesville, is to fix the subdivision regulations. And the way it should read is subdivision regulations and land development code. We ignore part 2 of that when we're looking at, it almost reads like, it seems like that only applies if you're doing a grand spanking new subdivision. It doesn't. It applies to any development in the city.
That's what you approved tonight with that plat, was you said that it made you all subdivision.
Okay, we've had that discussion. And I want to make it crystal clear to everybody, because it's not crystal clear now, that the design standards really are the land development code, and they apply to any development. The problem, and I will back up and say, the subdivision regulations came about and were done by a land use attorney out of Little Rock, right after there was a big flap and the entire planning commission resigned because of the teed-off subdivision. I don't remember, I don't have any idea what was going on that caused all of that, but I asked it point blank, and how did you come up with these regulations? Because they were extensive, a lot more extensive than what Batesville had before. And he basically just borrowed stuff from various other cities, mostly Little Rock. And we made some revisions on that that clearly didn't make sense before it actually was sent up to the council. But there's still some things in there, and the things that do not mesh very well and aren't very clear, and they need to be cleaned up in order to make his job easier and to make it easier for you to understand what you're really required to do. And
Well,
Yeah,
I'd
'cause I don't
like-
think that was made clear that by anything that has a plat submittal is subject to all of the subdivision regulations. Doesn't have anything to do with whether.
and that's how we reviewed it.
And that's, yes, but that's, like I said, I don't think that has been made to commission, clear to commission members.
Well, and again, I will tell you that when I was the chairman of the Sherwood Planning Commission, and I've got 40 years' experience in this field, I still relied on staff. The staff has always got to know more about it than I'm going to know as a commissioner. And I'm free to review the thing and ask questions of staff, and if they miss something, they need to take care of it. But I'm going to rely on staff. And we need to make sure that staff has something that they can understand and actually use, that we haven't had in the past.
Well, I'd like one key point of emphasis I'd really like some clarification on is if you split it in two, it's called subdividing, because that's really caused a lot of problems, at least in my purview. I've had a situation where somebody had a 1.5 acre lot, and they wanted to cut part of it off to go with the house they were selling and joined it. Bam, you have a subdivision. I know Chelsea Barnell is sitting on 160 plus acres that could be developed in tremendously thoughtful phases, and she's been told previously, because she sold 1 or 2 lots off to various commercial places, she's done. So she's scared to death to cut off a 40-acre tract or a 10-acre tract and sell it to somebody because it's in the city limits, and she's afraid she's going to exercise the subdivision rules. So, to me, we need to be really clear and really thoughtful. We may be accidentally prohibiting development or just simply allowing people to take their properties and parcel them up separately when they're not. They're just going with other parcels because we have that weird stipulation that if you cut it in two, it has to be a subdivision.
I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with whether you cut it in two. If it requires a building permit, if it requires a plat in the middle.
None of these do. None of these situations do. I mean, not at this point. Now, somebody may buy 40 acres of Chelsea to put a subdivision in, and at that point they have to come in and do it. But Chelsea can't sell 40 acres off right now. Just for somebody to have the idea, she can't sell 40 acres to go put a heater stand up. So, you know, that's because she's been told not to.
You basically become a subdivision for 140 acres being lot 1 of Weaver, Barnell, whichever edition. You just have one, and it's you have to go about that. Where then you eventually you have to do a replat. So you're going to have 20 some odd replats of a subdivision by adding someone subdividing that property within what one thing is already done, as opposed to 140 acre tract where you have it platted out with just say 2 or 20 lots with the roads. I mean, you can replat, but that's because, well, I've got lot 20 and lot 19. Somebody wants to go ahead and combine them into one lot, so you just make that the replat and 19. So.
We need to simplify that and not prohibit people from selling chunks of their property off when there's not a subdivision going in, when there's not development.
When it comes time for somebody to actually look at fixing the subdivision regulations, there's kind of 2 ways to deal with a lot split. And one is if you've got existing lot, a subdivision, that's one kind of lot split. You could have a large lot that you could split into 2, and it would be, as long as they met the standards for lot size, you could do it. There's another one that's typically, the subdivision rules don't apply if it's 10 acres or more. So that's another way to look at it. But you got to be careful, and I'd really want to do some research on that, because people could abuse that in a big hurry, and then you'd be subdividing when you weren't subdividing. And you'd want to watch out for that, because then you could have lots of landlocked stuff. And the whole point of subdivision regulations is to make sure things like that don't happen.
I mean, I'm fine with you. I mean, if we come up with something that has some very basic things, such as if a property is cut off, it's a meets and bounds description, you know, it is cut off, as long as it meets these very simple requirements, which could mean, you know, deeded access to whatever, you know, then we do it. I just, like I said, I can think of things I have ran through throughout the years, and I know Kyle has for sure, where it's, unless we're looking at cattle farm.
It's the same thing. It's like the developer may just say, I'm just going to sell property, and you don't say anything about it, and they deed it out, and then you come about and find it in your title search. Is that okay? Well, there was never access conveyed, and I mean, that's when your problems happen. I mean, it's stuff that again, you know, taken into thought, not by us, but I'm saying in general, when they were done, the person sold them out. You know, it's just you run into situations, you know, like that. They might be in a position where they sold it and said, "Here, give me the cash."
If it's being purchased by someone other than an adjoining landowner, access us people make. Because a lot of the stuff that I consider splits are when the neighbor wants to buy, extra property. So I think it's very simple, we don't need to overthink it, but I think we just need the ability to not have somebody split 2 acres to keep park here and park there and have to put a paved road in with curbs and gutters and a sidewalk. Because that's been something we've run into.
Depends. If it's this way, yeah, you gotta flat road. If it's this way, and they both access the street, we ought to be able to take care of that.
Again, something that should be looked at by the planning commission, that should go through the approval process to make sure it meets the subdivision regulations. If it's inside the city, it needs to meet subdivision regulations.
I will say that it's very common in cities all over the state, except for the smallest, that assigns certain minor sorts of subdivision things like lot splits to the staff. They give them permission, and the staff can bring it to the commission if they want to for some reason. But very minor stuff to keep it from being too bureaucratic, where there is no public interest to be served by being a full public hearing or anything.
If it meets the subdivision requirements, yeah, go ahead and have staff approve it. That kind of thing is understandable, but if it's something that doesn't meet, then yeah, you're opening the door for more landlocked properties and things you're gonna stumble upon later on.
Well, it's been my experience that was done a long time ago, and I don't know who in the world thought that was a good idea. To parcel those places out there that had no access to public roads. That's probably before the subdivision rules ever came into play.
Well, I mean, that was one of the first things we reviewed, right? Was a parcel that was split off of another parcel that shouldn't have been, that was not only within the city. It didn't meet, of course, back then, it probably didn't have the code on it, but it didn't meet the legal subdivision, private subdivision covenant that it was within to begin with. So now we came across that issue, and we should have remedied it. But it had access to the street, so again, if that situation comes up to where, like if they'd have been proposing to build a structure that met the code, that's probably something you should have went ahead and done, got it straightened out and approved it and gone on, But I feel it's in the code itself. It's our duty to remedy things, not encourage situations that are going to be problems down the road.
Can you think of any other, this particular property, I was thinking, again, probably the only time we're gonna come up with something like that. This is a very special, specific property that would have something like this. I mean, there's either the properties that have just been undeveloped that have frontage, or, I mean, there's nothing in the city that would be landlocked like that meets the bounds that has not been developed, or has some type of development plan.
I'm sure if you look hard enough, you can find something, but,
What do you think, Joey? Mr. Developer?
But I mean,
I've tried.
What may or may not exist, or what your opinion on something is of its potential, or the
visibility,
or the future. No, that's not factual.
You can see that. I mean, if it was something that had potential, it would either have been marketed or at least. I mean, this is again, it's a rarity, but we're still going back to the same thing. We need to move on.
All right, could we move on to the other side? If there are any other questions on commercial.
I did want to ask, does anybody know the elevation of the hospital? We've got 50 feet in here, I just want to make sure that's
I don't know the elevation.
in line with.
Batesville Fire is capable of reaching it, but I don't know the height.
So, I honestly don't keep up with hotels. I don't know, because we're definitely going to have another hotel come in here sometime soon. Is that 50 foot unreasonable for, a certain hotel that might be coming in that wants to go X amount? I don't know, I just don't want to accidentally prohibit some sort of commercial use that we know is going to be coming in and we know 50 feet may be fine.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of like the setbacks. You need to leave it at 50 foot and make an exception for a planned development on a hospital or a high rise or a hotel. Like those special cases that we keep bringing up, this might happen, that needs to be handled as a special case. not as a
And
blanket for the
in the
community.
case of elevation, I defer to the fire marshal, period, because he's doing the state fire code, and I don't care what the city wants to do, it can't violate the fire code.
Yeah, agreed, okay. That's all I have on commercial.
We move to industrial.
Let's do it. Industrial zoning district review.
And this one, I did the same thing. I tried to make it a little clearer and simpler, and I didn't change anything.
It's just more of a cleanup of the table.
Yes,
Okay.
that's all it does.
Okay.
But I want you to look at it and see if there's any hidden gems in those requirements that we need to look at, like I found on R2. I mean, if we're gonna change it, try and simplify it, I don't wanna make it more complicated, but I'm not sure we're covering the bases we need to cover.
And Rob, all these revisions and stuff, are we packaging these all up to go in the big public hearing?
Wasn't really planning on it, because we've already advertised for residential.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
We can hold I would recommend holding a separate public hearing, because commercial and industrial probably not gonna have the same level of interest
Yeah.
that residential has, but you saw the level of residential interest.
Sure.
And that final one, on the deletion of current chapters, let me explain something. When I first decided that we kept amending the original zoning ordinance, and we were amending the ordinance a whole bunch of different times, and each time we did it, we would leave the original ordinance in place, and so at some point, you're really not sure what it is you're supposed to enforce, because you got 17 ordinances that all deal with zoning. And so I recommended to the then city attorney and the mayor and the council that instead of amending the zoning ordinance, we amend the municipal code. And that means that anytime we make a change to the code, it's put in the code, and we put footnotes in to say what ordinance it was that changed that particular provision, instead of updating an ordinance and an ordinance and an ordinance. We're updating a code. And that's what the municipal league did when they put the municipal code together for the city. It was basically a list of all the ordinances grouped by chapters. So that if anything looked like it was subdivision, it was put in the subdivision code. If anything looked like it was zoning, it was put in the zoning chapter. So I took there were some things in there and they included things like they have things that had to do with the ordinance itself and not the code. And I'm taking those out because they're not appropriate. Unfortunately, sometimes words fail me, but there's a clause in there that says if this is duplicative or amends anything, that it takes care of it. And that doesn't need to be in the code. The ordinance does that. And so I'm taking those out so that there's no confusion about that. That's all that is.
Yeah, remove the duplicates, it won't be necessary.
It's called a repealer clause. Your code now has a repealer clause, and that's only something that's useful on an ordinance, not a code.
Any other items there, Rob? Comments?
Well,
No old business to discuss, guys? I will look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Okay.
Get what I do.